This is a topic I wanted to talk about for a while now concerning Destiny and the current build meta in the game. It's no shock that I play with a ton of different builds and then make a ton of build videos, and while a lot of these builds that I make are super fun to play with, they all just suck. Like, they're complete dog ass. Now, I'm not saying that the builds I make suck in particular, but in general, every single build that exists inside of Destiny 2 right now is extremely mid. And the reason that these builds are so bad is because of the current mod meta. Bungie has this thing they love to do, which is making old content, items, or things in their game become obsolete so they can generate hype for the new stuff. As an ever-evolving sandbox, I completely get wanting players to use things that are new to the game, but nerfing old mods has a super negative impact on the build situation. I want to add a quick disclaimer that I'm not trying to complain about the game or shit on it in any way. A lot of the community usually does have a bunch of negative things to say, and I don't want this to be another super negative opinion, but I think it's important to highlight things that need to be worked on from the development side of things rather than pretending that the game is in a good place. A little while back, Warmind cells and Charged with Light mods used to be extremely strong. This was before Elemental Well mods were released, and they made builds extremely viable in end-game content. Things like Protective Light, Reactive Pulse, Taking Charge, and then almost every single Warmind Cell mod was top tier. Every mod had its own place where it was useful, and then most importantly, these mods were just easy to use. And I don't mean easy as in they made the game too easy to play, but more so that they just flowed with the way that you typically play the game. So naturally, as more and more Elemental Well mods came out, Bungie has consistently nerfed these top tier mod options into the ground. Not only does this completely limit the diversity of builds in the game, but it artificially forces you to use something because every other option in the game is no longer viable. My big issue with the Elemental Well mods is that they are just completely useless in 99% of endgame content. When under power, each of these mods requires a kill with a particular weapon or ability. After earning this kill, only a single well mod will spawn, which must then be picked up. And then after picking this Elemental Well mod up, you get an extremely limited benefit in most cases. In general, getting a kill is going to take much longer when enemies are tankier, which means you are going to generate less Elemental Wells. Enemies are then going to hit way harder, so chances are picking up the Elemental Well will result in a death. And using something like Seeking Wells wastes an entire mod slot and doesn't guarantee that a well will track you because you might be too far away or the well might just get stuck. And then, if you use something like Well of Tenacity, which is supposed to be our pinnacle resist mod for builds, you get damage reduction for a whopping 7 seconds. Not to mention, well mods are extremely subclass based, so certain mods are just not going to be viable when on different subclasses. Font of Might only works for weapons of certain elements. Font of Wisdom only works for wells matching your subclass. Supreme Well Maker setups force you to be on stasis for damage. The list goes on, and in general, for basic builds to work, you're going to need multiple copies of mods stacked up, which again limits the diversity of builds and typically limits them to a single benefit like recharging your grenade or melee ability. At the end of the day, we only have 5 mod slots, and getting a basic build setup where you can generate and effectively use Elemental Wells requires 3 to 4 mods in and of itself. The mods appear to be insanely strong if you run them in low-end content. The strike gameplay you're watching, for example, makes them seem absolutely broken with infinite grenades and ability regen, but as soon as you take them into a GM or Master Raid, there is next to no chance that you are able to consistently use them. Sure, you might be able to get Font of Might here or there to kill a champion, or gen wells for a bit of energy back, but for an entire mod slot, it's just not worth it. I would argue that this season with Void 3.0, 90% of the insane builds that you've seen and that have been released really come down to the subclass layout and exotics you choose to run rather than the mods you use. Sure, things like Volatile Flow are nice, but that's seasonal, and first and foremost, it is a Void 3.0 fragment. Bungie has claimed that they think their game is a definitive action MMO, and in any MMO you have roles that your team needs to cater towards. These are things like support, ad clear, DPS, tanks, you get the point. It honestly felt like we were able to start getting our feet wet with these roles with Warmind cells and Charged with Light mods. You could focus on healing builds and support builds. You could go balls to the wall with Warmind cells for ad clear. You could even help increase your team's DPS with things like Power of Rasputin. I remember going into day 1 for DSC knowing that my team was running different mods for different purposes. Fast forward to the launch of Vow of the Disciple, and everyone was just running a basic elemental well build that only really benefited themselves. And even then, 90% of the time, it was impossible to grab elemental wells. I mean, for Bungie forcing our hand to run these mods, you would think that they wouldn't put a giant force field up that prevents you from grabbing wells you spawn in the final encounter of their brand new raid. Hopefully, I've made it pretty clear that I don't just think elemental well mods are bad, but they also have a vastly negative impact on the game. But like I said, I don't want to just shit on the game and then provide no solution, so my solution would be this. First and foremost, I think we need a new mod type in the game. If we reach Lightfall and still don't have a new set of unique mods, the game is going to feel extremely stale. I also think that elemental well mods either need a buff, or we need to be able to run more of these. For how weak these mods are at an individual level, only having 5 on at any time is just not enough. That will never fix them for endgame content, because I still believe running to grab something where enemies are spawning is a death sentence, but it would be a step in the right direction. I do also think that the more combat style mods you can run, the more diverse we can make builds. Obviously, this would require mod tuning, but you get the point. And then lastly, I think Bungie needs to stop nerfing the hell out of old mods. Warmind cells were strong, but a 50% nerf was way too harsh. Protective Light was OP, but 10% makes it completely useless. Believe it or not, there is a difference between nerfing something and balancing it to be better fit for the current sandbox. These are my thoughts. Obviously, doing each of these would be a lot, but just one of these things would be a step in the right direction. I think builds are people's favorite part of Destiny 2. I think they will remain a fan favorite, and I just want to see them become useful in the future again. Anyways, that's all for this video, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, whether you agree, whether you disagree, just do it respectfully. As always, have a good one. Peace.